and we got in the car and started driving down to the South. And we were full of all of the best emotions and motivations, and we were ready to take on the beast. And we came through all the states, and we were still pumping. We were high. Spirits were great. We were singing. We were high. We were going in there. And all of a sudden, we approached the sign that says, "Welcome to Mississippi." I never in all my life will forget this. All of a sudden, as we passed that sign, it became loudly silent. Zap. And we rode silently and with the speed limit. I don't know, different people have different times. I suppose it was about 10, 15 minutes or more. It's nothing, just absolute fear, petrifying fear, riveting us to there. And then Chuck McDo said, "Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, oh yeah, turn me around, oh yeah, turn me around." We all joined in and sang from the border of Mississippi to Jackson, non-stop, as we pumped ourselves back up and constantly dealing with that fear.
We hope to send into Mississippi this summer upwards of 1,000 teachers, ministers, lawyers, and students from all around the country.
How would they find the people who killed those guys in Neshoba County? You got to come back to the state of Mississippi and have a jury, all their cousins, their aunts, their uncles. And I know what they're going to say, not guilty, because no one saw them pull the trigger. And as long as he can do that, he can sit down beside me, he can watch me go up there and register to vote, and he can watch me take some type of public office in this state, and he can sit down as I rule over him just as he's ruled over me for years, you see. This is our country, too.
That guy from Oberlin who was doing the Freedom Press was, you remember him? Remember, they put out their first issue around their campaign kickoff. You remember the Freedom Press, right?
Yeah, I remember the Freedom Press. I'm trying to think. Now that you mention it, I remember the Freedom Press.
Right, they started that little paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is in the Masonic Temple. This is where Medgar was always. This is really where the NAACP sort of did most of their work is. And so through Medgar Evers, he opened up the facilities for us to use. It was used in training, especially for demonstrations, support. He allowed us to use it also for working with young people to teach them about how to do voter registration in the city. And just before Medgar was killed and after he was killed, it was really the place for training the young kids, you know, for the demonstrations, different nonviolent techniques and things of that nature. So, and out of this room came a lot of the plans for sit-ins during that period, especially around Medgar's office. So that's what this was. It was a place where we had a lot of the rallies that they was held at a church back here. That was, which church it was? It's still back here. That was a church that we met up there. A lot of mass rallies. And then they would let us use the auditorium for rallies a lot of times. And that was primarily the work of, well, as a result of Medgar's influence to get use of this building and a lot of the other buildings. One of those buildings there was the office, when I first came to Jackson, where the core SNCC office was. And then we moved down further down here to the corner of Lynch and Rose Street. Right next to the graveyard is where the COFO office was located. But down to this area here is that there used to be restaurants and stuff here, barbershops and black businesses along this area. All that's gone now. It's taken over by the universities, but we used to eat at a restaurant called Smackovers. It's where most of the movement people would gather, you know, in the evenings or after we finish work a lot of times to eat. When I came here, first time this was actually occupied by two SNCC workers. That's Paul Brooks and his wife. And that was, they shared this office building on Lynch Street that I was showing you earlier with poor Tom Gaither. So, and then I'm a little bit fuzzy, and then I began to work some in Hattiesburg, and back there. And so Paul Brooks, in that meantime, he and his wife, they left. And that house was taken over by Snake and Core. And that's where we stayed. So it was really a place where people stopped in. They came out from the Macomb, Hattiesburg area, Giat and Dory and some of the others. I think even Hollis and Curtis and them and all came. So we would just use this house. Maddie came in from Hattiesburg. Who eventually I married her, you know, during that time is. And so we used that as that stopover. And really the people used this house moving between the southern part of Mississippi and the Delta here in Jackson. We had a major voter registration program here at some point during that period of time, 6 to 8 months, that I was into this place here. And so we worked out of here. Those people who worked here stayed in this place. When Fluky, Matt Suarez, and George Lane, and those people first came, that's where they stayed. So during that period, as people moved in and began to join in with the movement, where they came in parts of Mississippi, outsiders, this was probably first, because the only hotel you could get was what they call the Sumner's Hotel, which is right down the street here, Pearl Street, going like you're going downtown. Now Blues House was the black-owned hotel. That's some place we could put people up, but we had no other place that we could stay except for the homes of people, so we opened that up. And then the strategy was we began to move out, and people began to get these little apartments, you know. So at times, in the height of the movement of 63, 64, I mean, we would have, as Bob was saying, you would have this place be packed, people sleeping all outside here, and everybody's apartment was packed, you know. I mean, you just had cots, sleeping bags, wherever you had to sleep on. So in the first part, the average was about, I would say, about 8 to 10 people living there. But at any given night, that could balloon to 20, 25 people, you know, who would come in and stay through this. But Freedom House is beginning to set up all through the movement. But where it came from, I'm not sure but it seems to me, if my memory correct about the history, it was part of what they used the term also around the Underground Railroad. And so that connection, I think, is caught on by people now. How did Core Snake get to it, or whatever, I think was probably pick up, or NAACP, what you have. So we had Freedom Houses were all over the place. So this is where the office was. Here, I don't know if you remember, call the incident. The other incident was here is that I can't ever think of who was the lady who actually saved my life right here. It was that I came out of this building, it was about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and I got in the car, and a car with 2 white guys came up, and the guy pulled a shotgun out. I was just sitting there, and he says, "All right, it's time to die, nigga." And so what threw him off, I guess, is I couldn't think of anything to do. I just started laughing. I just cracked up, you know. So somebody came out the office to tell me something. I don't know who the volunteer was, and so she just started screaming, "Help, help, help." They tried to get ready to kill Dave, and she ran behind and said, "I got the license number, I got the license number," and they just took off. But I never could stop laughing. And when I did stop laughing is I had to make it right straight into the bathroom.
As a student at Tougaloo, I was engaged in a number of protests, sit-ins. We were able to help bring Head Start to the state of Mississippi, and Mrs. Hudson was always around. You had the Aaron Henrys, the Medgar Everses, but you could always count on Miss Hudson to be somewhere in the crowd, and in her own right, she was the stability that encouraged other leaders of the civil rights movement to do what they were doing.
When we started going to the meeting in Jackson, Aaron was the man. Aaron and Medgar were the man. Medgar was not the field director then, but later on he became the field director. I don't know what year he came to be the field director at ACP. But I got with Aaron, and I stayed with Aaron until he died. And he made me strong. He made Medgar. So when Medgar got killed, I didn't care no more. You know, I said, well, if I have to, he had told us somebody was going to die. Somebody going to get killed. Say, don't fool you folks. It's dangerous out there. Say, don't fool nobody. Say, tell the teachers to get out of your way.
And we've always heard a lot about Miss Hudson, and we just got to talking, and I've been loving her ever since I was a kid. It affected us greatly all the way from probably early childhood to school, of free reduced lunches for children, a WIC program in Lee County. In the district I live in, it's probably 56.5% white. And being the first black elected official from that side of the county, she's played a major impact on politics in this county.
It's Grandma Ann, and on this side is her niece, Mandy Bright. And Grandma Ann was a little slave girl, and that's where she had my father and his brother by a white man. And she was one of the bravest. She's a midwife, she's a fortune teller, and she was everything, but she delivered babies all over this county. She depressed somebody to get a relief check, $6 what she got from the relief. And she would walk this community and she would store and borrow some material. And when she walked out, she just walked out and didn't pay it. And the man went to the door and said, Angeline, you haven't paid for, she's hard of hearing, you haven't paid for this stuff you bought. She said, boy, I ain't gonna give you nothing. See, I brought you into this world. There's a white man, and said what all she had did for him. Said, if it hadn't been for me, you would have died if it hadn't been for me. And this is her. But now she got a large generation in this area, Turners. So they call me Ange after her.
Leaders are chosen. We don't anoint ourselves. And yes, it's been tried by others to appoint our leaders for us. Many are called, few are chosen. Our honoree in my heart is a chosen one.
Miss Hudson's known throughout this state by virtually every politician. A lot of legislators in the House of Representatives know her very, very well on a first-name basis. She has helped from time to time pass significant legislation through the House and Senate just by knowing and being affiliated with the various legislators down there. As I've said, she's worked hard to bring programs into the 45th District to help children, to help the elderly, and the poor people. So, you know, that's something that a lot of people they just can't say. And I think Ms. Hudson probably is, if I had to single out any one individual that I've been affiliated with since I've been in politics that has truly made a difference for the people, I would have to say Ms. Winston Hudson would be.
I was probably one of the first person to ever get a black home, and it might have been as a result of the suit that was filed by Ms. Hudson. Then houses started popping up all around Florence on miles. Of course, same house, I've done a lot of renovation, you wouldn't know it, but we couldn't get an $11,000 home then.
You have contributed more than any race in this nation, coming down through hard trials and tribulation, fought in every war in America's name. You never dragged her flag to shame. Oh come before it's too late. Don't you see I'm swiftly passing away? If I don't tell you, you will never know where you came from and where you should go. Now I said that everywhere I have a chance to speak, I say that because this young generation don't know, they really don't know. You know, I blame parents a whole lot for not telling them, but they don't want to hear what you got to say. They say, let's forget about all that old time and start now. But you can't do it. You got to know where you come from.
She's the greatest woman in the world, and I don't think it will be another Winston Hudson.
Her legacy will be charitable, humanity, love, kind, education, discipline, and motivation for her people.
She has been a grassroots warrior. Southern trees, southern trees, southern trees.
This is the muddy backwoods Tallahatchie River, where a weighted body was found, alleged to be that of young Emmett Till.
Plans for the Mississippi Freedom Trail have been discussed for several years. It was late in 2010 that specific plans were developed and implemented. Mississippi Development Authority's Division of Tourism brought together a group of civil rights scholars as well as veterans of the civil rights movement. Then sent out a request to entities all over the state, not just to individuals, to tourism offices, to local NAACP chapters, to county boards of supervisors, really to anyone who would have some knowledge of civil rights events in Mississippi, and asked them to submit information on sites as well as background information on the events that occurred at that site. And certainly the purpose was to acquire an accurate and as exhaustive an inventory as possible of civil rights sites in Mississippi. Approximately 200 were submitted, and it became a real, almost a history lesson in itself in reviewing those sites. All of that information was turned over to this task force that was comprised, again, of scholars and veterans of the movement. They reviewed the sites, they evaluated them, and determined the first markers that should take place on the Mississippi Freedom Trail. The first marker was unveiled in Money, Mississippi, at the site of the grocery store where Emmett Till had the tragic encounter and of whistling at the white woman. And I know it may sound strange, but I think there was something about that marker unveiling that was just almost uplifting, when you, on one hand, are moved to tears at the thought of what happened to really this child, but yet you see the spirit of the people who suffered most, and those being his family members. The second took place at the Medgar Evers house here in Jackson, and that was done in May of 2011, following the unveiling of the Emmett Till marker, and was done during the 50th anniversary of the Freedom Riders. And to see that site of literally busloads of Freedom Riders along with some of their family members arrive, and that again was an extraordinary moment. A tremendous crowd gathered in the street there in front of his house. The Greyhound bus station here in Jackson, again done during the anniversary of the Freedom Riders. And of course the Greyhound bus station, like bus stations and drugstores throughout the South, was the site of sit-ins and refusals to go to the colored section. I think to see that in downtown Jackson, and that marker that hundreds, if not thousands, of people walk by every day, and it was extraordinary. And you have to wonder how many people have walked by that bus station not knowing the history that took place there, but now because of that marker, their awareness of that history is raised.
We've been working on a great project called the Mississippi Blues Trail, which started in 2006. This project evolved from the Mississippi Blues Commission as well as the Mississippi Development Authority. We worked hand in hand, developing the preface for paying homage to so many great blues artists and so many sites around the state that shaped and formed the culture of blues heritage, that not only made Mississippi the birthplace of the blues, but it also gave this musical art form to the world. So many genres have benefited from the likes of great blues artists such as Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf and Robert Johnson. So many great musicians that have come from our state. And we've been fortunate to, since December of 2006, to start this trail and have markers placed throughout the state of Mississippi honoring, as I mentioned, Charlie Patton, Robert Johnson, Muddy Waters, B.B. King, you name it. All these great guys came from the Mississippi soil and just basically influenced so many others in the rock genre and pop culture. They worked with other country music artists such as Jimmy Rogers. And so when you think about the blues culture and where it come from in the heart of the Mississippi Delta, it's gone as far as Europe and so many great places outside of Mississippi, Chicago, Memphis, as far as Rockland, Maine, when you think about great festivals on the Atlantic coast, when you think about the Grammys and what that musical academy has brought to the table as far as so many genres of music, so many great artists like John Lee Hooker and B.B. King have walked away with Grammy Awards. So the Blues Trail have allowed us to be able to not only pay homage to each of these artists, but to be able to give people a roadmap to be able to go around the state of Mississippi.
Like I said, Sister Mary Noel Stewart was a director, and she was a nun. She lived in Vicksburg, and at that time she was in the area. And Mr. Buffington, I'm sure a lot of people know John Buffington, the late John Buffington, was very active in the civil rights movement. And out of that, they saw the need to have child care, especially for a lot of the parent that was on welfare. And in doing that, the daycare center evolved.
I majored in sociology and philosophy, and I spent a lot of my time in the library just trying to figure out why we were so far behind. Well, it was quite obvious we hadn't had opportunities. It was in 1967.
Head Start is and has always been a significant part of the early childhood education landscape in Mississippi. I'm sure you've talked to other folks who told you that as far back as 1965, at its inception, Head Start served as an opportunity for children and families to work to make significant improvement in their lives and in their condition. When Head Start started, I can remember I was 9 years old in the Delta, and there was a tremendous amount of buzz around this program, this federal program. And while I really didn't know what Head Start was or what it was about, it was very clear in the black community that this was an opportunity for black folks to hold their heads up. We'd been working in the fields and working in kitchens and working in places where our heads were always down, where we didn't look people in the eye. And this was an opportunity for black people to stand up and have a job and really be considered professionals. It's always been very clear in the African American community that success was based on education, to the point that you had to be smarter than your counterpart.
Most people like to talk about when Head Start was defunded in the state. It did not receive funds because the then governor vetoed all the grants. And those who were working in Head Start continued to work on a volunteer basis.
Fully funding MEEP, the Mississippi Adequate Education Program, we are $1 billion behind in funding since its creation in 1996.
Our local United Way now that support has been for us, then I don't think we would be here financially. Well, I know we wouldn't, had it not been for our local United Way. And we've been a part of that ever since they organized here in Clay County. So that has been a blessing to us, that we were able to continue the services in Clay County for our children and parents.
It's never a time when you know exactly when you're going to get your money. So that's an issue with nonprofits. The cash flow is a main problem. So trying to overcome that.
The shaded areas in here are black majority counties in that time. But there were more people in these two black majority counties than on all of the rest of this area. So John R. Lynch was elected because of these black majority counties in here. And so he served, and there was immediately underway an effort to try to get rid of John R. Lynch. And the way you do that is to redistrict people out of office. So this is what the state did to try to get rid of John R. Lynch. So they gave him, this is the 6th district that they redrew. And it's all the way up the Mississippi River, one county wide until you get up, this is Issaquah and this is Sharkey. So it's 2 counties wide in here. You get, at the time that this was created, Quitman County wasn't even born then. This was Tunica County, so it's just about a county wide all the way down. So they figured that the only way John R. Lynch would be able to survive and get elected would be to swim up and down the river or paddling a little boat up and down the river. But somehow he made it. But they took him into court and said he didn't win, and he won it in court, so he was back in office as the congressman from the 6th district. So you can't get him that way. You find another way to do it. Now, this is what they did to his district. Now, you remember what you saw on the first time, that the 6th district included Claiborne County, which was about 90% black, and Copiah County in here had about 80% black. Now they've taken that out, and you've only got Adams, Wilkerson, and Emmett in all of this area over here, with very few blacks in there at all. Very, very few blacks. So this is the way that they got. And so when John R. Lynch looked at it, he bought himself a ticket to Chicago. He said, "The hell with it." You know, he knew that he couldn't get elected with all of the people over here and only 3 black majority counties. So he gave it up and left Mississippi.
Right. Mississippi was one of 2 states that still had a legislative Democratic body. It was in the Deep South, Mississippi and Arkansas, after the 2010 election. Because of intensive organizing, community development, we were able to maintain a balance of power in the state. However, after the 2011 elections, the House of Representatives was lost by 1 seat. And as a result of that, conservative in the state, they were able to consolidate power in a way we have not seen since the 60s. We soon realized that much of the state policy was being developed by a group called the American Legislative Exchange Council. Based in Washington, D.C., it was a conservative group that focused on developing model state legislation that reflected core principles of individual liberties, downsizing government, state rights, and other conservative principles that would severely limit and weaken the social safety net for elderly, for children, and for those who are disadvantaged. So much of our fight during this legislative session has been to prevent many of the draconian public policies from being adopted that would adversely impact ordinary Mississippians.